afternoon and welcome to today's webinar session hosted by the Belizeing.com and the Belize Hotel Association. Today we have Ali Wonderman as the presenter and we also have Simone assisting with the hosting. Hello. Hi Ali and Simone, are you online?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you turn on your cameras?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining in.
Hi. So we have a couple people in the room. Should we give a couple more seconds for others to log in, Simone?
I think we could wait about 2 more minutes, but in the meantime, we can just start some housekeeping. So thank you everybody for joining us today on another edition of the Belize Hotel Association's live webinar brought to you in conjunction with Belizeing.com. We have an amazing guest with us today. And before I introduce you to her, I know one of the concerns that's on everybody's mind right now is what's going on with the CDC requirements. It's been a challenge. The entire last year was a challenge, and this year has started off as challenging, even more so because it affects our entire market. But like I sat and I examined and I said, okay, well, where are the opportunities in this? Now that we're seeing that the only thing that is constant is change, how do we as a sector respond to the changes that are taking place? And then I got messages of local hotels who are actually stepping up to the game and saying, okay, now how can they negotiate testing facilities at their properties for their guests? So when I see initiatives like this coming to the forefront, and when we have someone as wonderful as Ali here on the show with us today to teach us about creating inspirational stories, the combination of like a rapid response and the art of inspiring is exceptional. It's these challenges that allow us to rise to the occasion, plan new strategies, develop new incentives, and create fabulous stories. And with that, I think I'm going to introduce Miss Ali Wonderman. She is no stranger to Belize. She's actually a resident in process because, if she could lift herself from where she is right now, she would plant herself here immediately. So she's actually one of the best persons to work with on this particular topic of storytelling, content creation, and SEO in marketing. She has a wealth of experience. Her background is journalism. She has her own publication in addition to writing for wonderful names such as Forbes, Condé Nast. The list goes on and on and on. But with that, I'm gonna hand it over to you and say, as an association, that in spite of the challenges, we are always looking for the opportunities to reinvent our product, to be able to flow with the change. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Ali.
Thank you so much, Simone. Really appreciate you having me here, and I'm really excited to talk to some of my friends in the Belize hotel industry. As Simone mentioned, I'm no stranger to Belize, so it's always nice to connect with you guys, especially when I can't be there. And there's nowhere else I'd rather be at any moment, but especially after being forced to be away for a full year. So glad to be here today and really excited to talk with you guys about storytelling and content creation and SEO. And driving inspiration while everyone's stuck at home. So first off, I'd love to introduce myself. And before that, I really want to extend my thanks to the Belize Hotel Association for inviting me to speak about this, to Steph from San Ignacio Resort Hotel for referring me, to Simone for having me, to Angela for making it all happen from Belizeing.com. For those of you I haven't met personally, I'm a travel journalist, and I've written for more than 60 different publications, predominantly in the United States, where I'm from. I live in Montana in the northern part of the U.S., same kind of cowboy culture down in Belize, which is really fun. I'm also the most recent guidebook author for Frommer's Belize. So I got to travel around the country and visit all the different hotels that ended up in the book and the restaurants and the different experiences. And it was, I think, the most fun writing assignment I've ever had. I'm also a copywriter and marketing content creator working with major brands. So in addition to journalism and straightforward storytelling, I do also the marketing side of content. And recently, through the COVID lockdown, I became a novelist. So I've written my first novel. It's not published yet, but I'm a writer through and through. As a travel professional and as a traveler, I've been lucky enough to visit 50 countries across 6 continents. The only place I haven't been is Antarctica. And I've stayed at hotels in all of those places. And my job is really to evaluate hotels and tourism industries and learn what it's like to visit a lot of these places. But with the whole world in front of me, I keep choosing to come back to Belize, and with any luck, I'll be a resident soon enough. And I think actually I've stayed at 13 of the Belize Hotel Association's member hotels, at least 13, just based on what's on the website. But I've stayed at a lot of different places in Belize, loved every one of them. So I'm really excited to share what I know about storytelling with my favorite country on the planet, and hope that you'll find this presentation to be as valuable as we move forward into the new normal of travel. Hopefully we can learn how to inspire together. So before we get into it, I just want to briefly mention what we'll be talking about. Here's a glimpse of the topics I intend to cover today. Each item here would honestly be enough for its own webinar. So I'm hoping I can touch on everything enough to give you an idea of how investing in storytelling and content creation and SEO can help your business. So here's just a quick graph of what that looks like. And then we'll move right into what am I even talking about? What are storytelling, content creation, and SEO? So this, as you know already, this is what I'll be talking about. And I think before we even get into the definitions, it's important to know that all 3 of these components work together in the digital marketing landscape. But we should unpack them first, like one of those Russian dolls that has the littler doll inside of it to get a better idea of how they actually work together. So SEO goes into content creation, which nests into the even larger doll of storytelling. You could do just one of these 3 things, but each of them is improved by the presence of the other. So we'll start off by talking about storytelling, which is kind of the biggest topic here. Whether that's writing, videos, photography, storytelling is content that promotes the values that your company and your customers have in common. So I think that's a really important point. Storytelling promotes the values that your company and customers share. Maybe it's a love of locally sourced food. Maybe it's the importance of spending time with family. In the context of hotel travel, I'll be talking about storytelling as a narrative that you create or amplify to connect your hotel brand with your target audience. Next, we'll talk about content creation, which at its most basic is the development of information in a media format to target specific audiences. There's more to it than just this, but we'll be getting into that next. And then finally, we'll discuss SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. It sounds really technical, and for that reason, it can be a little scary, but it's actually pretty straightforward, a way of getting search engines to rank you higher when people use Google. So that is how it all, what I'm going to talk about entirely, but you'll start to get an idea of how they fit in together as we move on. So first, we're going to be talking about storytelling. So I want to share one of my favorite quotes with you. Maya Angelou, the famous poet and author, famously said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And although she wasn't talking about marketing when she wrote this, marketing serves to create a connection between you and someone else. And this quote points out how powerful an emotional connection can be. So as I show what makes story-driven content unique, try to keep this quote in mind. Really think about the fact that people remember the way that you make them feel. And so that's why for the next slide, I crossed out it's not about what good storytelling looks like. It's about what good storytelling feels like. Because what you need to focus on is what your audience feels like when you create content, when you tell a story. So storytelling is going to be the most abstract of the topics that we cover today. And for that reason, it's one of the most commonly misused tools in digital marketing. Not everything is a story, which is why it's important to spend time brainstorming and strategizing. So when you're at the content creation step, you know what it is you want to say. So what does a good story feel like? These days, it's usually both written and visual. It's a set of words accompanying a photo or a video that says something. Draw people in from every angle. Use imagery to illustrate your words and vice versa. Next, a good story feels consistent. Just like a book can't change what genre it is 2 chapters in, storytelling for a brand needs to feel like it's being spoken by the same voice. Without consistency, potential guests won't trust you. They want to have a good idea of where they're going, and you need to ensure them that you know what it is that you're offering them. So back to that Maya Angelou quote, storytelling is memorable and inspirational. We're in a really unique position right now with the pandemic, where the vast majority of travelers are stuck at home and have been for almost an entire year. Booking a trip on impulse isn't possible the way that it once was, but there is an opportunity to capture and hold their imagination until they can travel again. Frankly, they aren't going to remember or care that a hotel was offering 15% off for booking 4 nights. But they will remember scrolling through Instagram and being transported beneath the blue waters to the coral forests of the Belize Barrier Reef through a photo and a story about what it's like to experience the silent world of undersea life. After getting transported out of their COVID prison, thanks to reading about someone's spiritual experience of climbing the steps of a Maya ruin, they will become dedicated to doing that for themselves when it's safe to travel again. Of course, it's important to make information available about deals and new safety procedures, but those things aren't going to get people to daydream about visiting your hotel. Learning about how Belize became a haven for jaguars and a top dive destination will. So storytelling is ultimately a vehicle for discovery by potential guests. Don't waste the opportunity by focusing only on those who have already decided to stay with you. And we'll get into more of what this means, but I think it's really important to point out in the memorable column that stories are remembered up to 22 times more effectively than facts or stats alone. Maya Angelou is right. If you make someone feel something, they're going to remember you. So next, let's break it down. So what do I mean when I say written and visual? Here we have an Instagram post from Azulik, which is a hotel in Tulum, Mexico. And I found them by Googling best hotels on Instagram. So try to keep that in mind for later when we're talking about SEO. All things considered, this isn't the greatest photo that anyone's ever taken. It's not professional. The light's overexposed, the details are a little grainy, and the colors look oversaturated. But that's not what really matters. It still earned over 14,000 likes in only a week because it isn't just a photo. Yes, the image shows a unique aspect of the destination that the property gives guests access to. Although I guarantee it's not the only property in Tulum that has access to the cenote. But it also has a written component that's just as important, which says, we're in a constant search for our place in nature. Where do we fit in? How can we best enjoy its beauty and protect it at the same time? These are the questions we strive to find answers to. So what do we know about the caption after reading it? It doesn't sell anything. It doesn't even talk about the resort. It poses a series of questions for the reader to consider, associating the values of protecting and enjoying natural beauty with the brand. Travelers who consider themselves eco-conscious or aspire to be seen that way, which is their audience, will enjoy feeling like this hotel is speaking to them directly. They'll feel seen, which validates them and creates a personal affinity for the hotel. Without ever showing or talking about the hotel itself, this story has now shown readers where they fit in the narrative of Azulik. And I want to point out that it's important that these things were done together. It's a good photo, it's not the best photo, but when it's paired with the story, it gives viewers a really strong sensation of what the hotel is without, again, showing or talking about the hotel. So then we want to move into the second piece of storytelling, which is about consistency. So it's a pretty straightforward concept, but it's actually a lot of work to execute it properly. This is the same Tulum resort, and you can see that it looks the same across their web properties. Lots of greens, browns, and tan colors that indicate that they're beachy and jungly and one with nature. The bohemian chic vibe is very common in Tulum, but they make themselves look like the masters of it, like they invented it, even though they didn't. Similarly, their central philosophy about being a hotel that values connection with nature, which is they put this philosophy on their Instagram stories, on their webpage. They make it really clear that this is what they're about. It comes through in everything they write and all of the photos and videos that they post. You can see on the left is 6 of their Instagram photos, and on the right is their webpage. It feels really consistent across the board. And I would say that if I came across one of their pictures on Instagram through the discovery section or browsing a particular hashtag they might use, I might get intrigued by the story they're telling. I like nature. I like connecting with the planet. So maybe I'll then click to see their Instagram profile, and wow, I'll see that they have a really strong understanding of who they are. And because I felt drawn enough to that initial photo to click on it, I get the feeling they understand me too. So now here I am daydreaming about visiting Tulum because this story about what it means to be part of nature has taken me there. It's transported me there. So I'm going to head to their website to see if this is something that I could afford. It wasn't about the money initially. It was about the story. And then once I get to the website, I'll receive further confirmation through their branding that they're consistent in what they're offering. And now I trust them to host me in a foreign country. So anyone can do this. Anyone can achieve this kind of consistency, but it just comes from developing your brand narrative, which is what we're going to get into next. This is another really big topic. Again, could be its own webinar. So we'll just start with the big picture. When it comes to developing a unique brand narrative, which is storytelling, we want to start with this big picture. By developing a brand narrative, you can create a foundation to work with in any marketing content, whether it's social media, web page, newsletters, magazine ads. If everything you create can be evaluated against your hotel's agreed upon story, agreed upon values, it'll be a lot easier to generate new content that feels consistent down the road. So essentially, you're creating a story, a series of components that define who your brand is, who your hotel is, so that anything that you create can be taken from there, and it all fits together once it's at the end user, once it's at the potential guests. So I want you to think about if your story, if your hotel was a book, what would fill its pages? Your hotel didn't just exist out of nowhere. Somebody had an idea. Somebody put a lot of work into building it, making it really special. Bring these stories together, decide what they have in common, and use them to draw in prospective guests that align with these stories. Because your hotel has characters, the buildings, the founders, the employees, the destination. Belize is one of the characters of your book. What kind of story are they going to be showing up in? And with that in mind, who's your audience? Knowing what your story is depends on who your audience is. Are your customers families with young children? Are they adventurous couples from the US who want to see everything in Belize during their annual vacation? Are they wealthy business people who want luxury and privacy from their resort? Each of you will have a different answer to this question, and in the next slide, we'll dive deeper into how to understand what who your story is for. And so finally, as you develop your storytelling, remember to be authentic. Belize is a very special place, and each of your hotels is a reflection of that uniqueness, whether it's through using locally sourced materials and architecture, featuring a menu full of the delicious food options found only in the Jewel, or by having access to some of the luscious jungles and reefs on the planet. Let these things speak for themselves. Features, amenities, and discounts can be acknowledged in the right times and places, but storytelling is so much more powerful at converting a prospective guest into someone relaxing poolside with a rum punch. And I'll get into why this is shortly. But I also want to point out, Belize isn't Tulum or Cancun and does not need to be. And so even though I used an example from Tulum, you don't have to try to be them. Belize is great on its own. So let's get into, I keep talking about storytelling. What is a story? So we need to describe what a story is and isn't. From the perspective of a hotelier, everything is amazing, or else you wouldn't have put it there. And I totally get that. But to travelers inundated with options, digging deeper is going to help you stand out. After all, you wouldn't read a book pointing out what things are unless you like reading dictionaries. So take the same approach when you think about the stories you have to tell. And so I included these quotes because I think they're really helpful to describe what a story is, which is a story is something that brings the reader into the experience, which is the core of any hotel stay. Sharing how your hotel came to be, that it's within minutes of hundreds of years of history, this is so much more powerful than pointing out that the hotel room has a desk. And frankly, data supports this. Good hotel storytellers online are moving away from the huge chunks of boring standardized text and descriptions of amenities towards the use of big, beautiful, bold images and captivating narratives and compelling bite-sized videos that are more fitting with today's multi-device, multi-channel universe. Again, depends on your audience because maybe they're not doing as much on their phones, but travelers in general are trending towards more of this multi-device way of booking travel. Using for social media purely for self-promotion is a mistake that many hoteliers make. But by using a storytelling approach for your efforts, you can make sure you get the right balance between creating interesting, engaging content that will promote your hotel. In today's day and age, potential guests, especially millennials, do not like to be sold to and will not want to follow your hotel if they're constantly bombarded with posts that say, stay at my hotel. Instead, you want to act as a sort of digital concierge and share posts that guests in the area would find useful. So it might not even just be about your hotel. Storytelling is about how amazing Belize is, about all the amazing things that you can do once you're in the country, and the hotel is going to help you access that, even though it's not directly about your property. So a story is something unique about your hotel that draws in the structures, the employees, the location, so that people reading or watching the story can get an idea of what it's like to actually be there. This is why I'm going to keep harping on about why it's time to leave posts about discounts and amenities in the past, unless they're few and far between. Potential guests don't want to be told to go book a room because they still need to be shown a reason why they should do that in the first place. They need to read and see how bottlenose dolphins like to play around on the boat that takes them out to a key. They need to find themselves looking at a feast of Belizean breakfast in front of the jungle and wish it was them there eating it. They need to read about how sipping a Belican while relaxing in a hammock is all that relaxation really needs. So I encourage you to sit down with your team and brainstorm what makes your hotel special. Decide which values are inherent to the experience, the kind of values you would like to see mirrored in your guests. So next we'll talk about that audience component that I was mentioning. Knowing your audience is such a big part of storytelling. I recommend creating 3 to 5 fake profiles of ideal guests based on the values you've determined reflect your hotel. Answer the questions here that I've listed to get a basic idea of who you're telling your stories to. Are they elderly couples from Florida? Are they young families from Canada? Honeymooners from New York? Do they want to read about off the beaten path activities or the best restaurants in town? Knowing who you're talking to will help guide the kind of stories you should be telling. So I put together, and I've done this for when I work with agencies and work in content marketing. We do this before we create any content. We always know exactly who we're talking to, what drives them, what values they have, and how to speak to them, because everyone speaks a different kind of travel language. You wouldn't talk to a cruise ship passenger the same way you would talk to a backpacker. So I put together this fake profile of someone. That's my friend who's also a travel journalist, volunteered her photo. So this is kind of what I'm talking about, creating the right story for the right person. I want you to meet millennial traveler Casey Jonas, a financial analyst from San Francisco. She's in Belize with her husband and plans to visit 2 hotels during their week-long stay. She has a stressful job and just wants to relax while also experiencing culture and history. She doesn't mind spending a little bit of extra money to get what she wants. She loves to try new foods and drinks, and while she doesn't love the outdoors, she likes to swim and snorkel. She also hopes to get a few good photos of her Instagram, which is how she found one of the hotels she's staying at. She knows she wants to see Maya ruins around San Ignacio, but isn't sure where she's going to stay yet. So what I'd like you all to think about is, what kind of story would you tell to get this particular traveler to choose your hotel as her second destination, even if it's not in San Ignacio? What would you tell the millennial traveler like Casey to get her to stay with you, if she's the kind of person you would want to stay there? But you get the idea. You want to understand who it is that could be staying at your hotel, and then what sort of stories need to be told to attract them. Okay, so we are going to be talking about picking your platform now, which is another really huge topic. But now that we have an understanding of what storytelling is and what it can accomplish, let's talk about creating the content to get those stories out there. So essentially, content creation is the vehicle for your story. This is a big topic because there are so many options, and it feels like there's new ones coming out every single day. It can feel really overwhelming when a new storytelling technology becomes popular and you feel like you haven't even begun to master the last one. But the good news is you don't have to. When it comes to creating content, pick platforms that are going to serve you best. If you want millennial travelers, blogging and Instagram is the way to go. If you want families, Facebook and YouTube might be better. If you have lots of time, why not write a book? There's a lot of different things that you can do, but you don't need to do all of them. Take some time to research all the options and then decide on choices that you can reasonably do, because a lot of them take a lot of time. Determine if sending a weekly newsletter is really worth it. Does your audience want to be contacted once a week? Maybe they don't. Maybe you don't need to be doing that much. Can you guarantee enough original content to make the newsletter worthwhile as often as you think you should be doing it? Once a month really might be enough. So each platform is nuanced in how people use it and how they speak to each other. So really consider this before deciding to commit. If your resort, if your hotel isn't the kind of place that TikTok users, which is mostly teenagers and people in their early 20s, if that's not your audience, then you don't really need to be on TikTok. And the way that they use it is really unique from other platforms. So unless you're going to take the time to figure out how they all engage with each other, it's just not always worth it. Ultimately, it's better to do a really good job on fewer platforms than simply be present on all of them. And remember what I said earlier, in that establishing your brand narrative will make it easier to generate content on whichever platforms you choose. Always map it back to that original platform of who we are and what are the kinds of things that we say. So now that we've talked about what kind of platforms, you need to decide who's going to be making this content. You have your platforms, your audience, your stories, your values. So now you just need to you need to find someone to create content and oversee its distribution. Your content can come from a lot of different sources, and that will come down to manpower, budget, and what types of content creation you've decided to invest in. You can hire marketing staff to get your stories out there. You can hire a marketing agency and just hand all that work off to them. You can hire freelancers like me to generate content. Even influencers are a creative way to generate new content while they do marketing on your behalf through their personal platforms. The influencer marketplace is very new and very interesting, but it can have a great return on getting people to visit your hotel. But whatever you decide, you still need to develop some kind of calendar to strategize what's going out and when. Ideally, an editorial calendar will be created as you start this process so that you can plan ahead, tie things to the holidays, special things going on in Belize. And then someone needs to send this content out into the world. And ideally, you'll also be able to analyze the data to optimize for future storytelling efforts. This can all be the same person overseeing from content creation to content data analysis. It doesn't have to be. Different people can do different parts of these. There's plenty of photographers and writers in Belize that are ready and willing to be hired to do this sort of work for you or with you. And if you work with several content creators, this brand narrative is going to become really handy because you can compile your stories, your values, your target audience, and distribute it to them so that it's really easy for them to know what your voice is and who your brand is, and get that consistency that we mentioned earlier is so important. With all this in mind, there is a nice loophole on Instagram that I would like to see more hotels in Belize use because it's free and it's really effective, which is let your guests make content for you. This is Instagram exclusive, but let's go back to that hotel in Tulum. What I didn't mention before is that they're the most followed hotel on Instagram, so they know what they're doing. But I went through their feed, and guess what? Most of their pictures come from their guests. They didn't pay for that. They didn't, whoops. How do I clear that? Go back to slides. There we go. So as I was mentioning, so all of this content is coming from their guests who have paid to be there. And what they do is just, this hotel does is just in the comments says, can we repost this photo? It's free. And then they say yes, because Instagram is a huge marketplace for travel, and savvy travelers, especially ones that want to become influencers, they really want to have their photos reposted by the brands that they've connected with. They might tag you or use your custom hashtag if you have one, but there's really no harm in finding these photos and asking if they'd be willing to share it. The only thing I want to note here is that you don't get the rights to the photo just by reposting it on your Instagram or social media. So you can't use it on your website or sell it in any way. But even so, I went through many high performing hotels on Instagram, and I would say somewhere around 75% of the photos on all these pages came from guests. So they weren't even paying for this photo content, which I think is pretty remarkable. So now that we have a good idea of what storytelling is, how it fits into creating content, let's talk about SEO. Again, it can feel really intimidating because it sounds really technical. It does have a lot of components to it if you want it to, but these days, even doing the minimum amount of SEO is basically essential. So why is it important? Search engine optimization helps drive your site to the top of searches, and consumer behavior says this is where you want to be. If you look on the left, 92% of people click at least once on the first page of results. That means if you're showing up on the second page, you might as well not even be on the internet when it comes to internet searches. So the good thing is that what it basically boils down to is incorporating relevant terms into the content you're already creating to drive your hotel higher up in Google searches. A good example would be when someone Googles Belize Hotel. You want to show up. Right now, just so you all know, the top result, at least here in the US with my market, is Naya Resort and Spa. That's the first hotel that shows up. In San Ignacio, if you Google San Ignacio Hotel, it's San Ignacio Resort Hotel. And I think that, I know that they do a great job with marketing, but they've done a lot of SEO practices that help drive them up, including having a name that has the town in it, and their URL is great. So it's just ways of essentially using Google for your advantage. There are infinite terms that people use on Google, and there's plenty of space that all of you can occupy. So it's really helpful to learn how SEO can work for you. Now that we know its power, we need to figure out how to harness it. You want your web page to be one of the top results when someone Googles relevant terms. Let's say, like I said, Belize Hotel, but even budget tropical vacation or rainforest escape for families. It's infinite. A lot of times these search terms will yield articles from newspapers and magazines that have compiled lists of hotels in that category. So hopefully at a later time, I can talk with you guys about working with journalists like me and media so that you end up in those articles. But for now, we'll focus on getting your hotel itself up in Google. So first, you want to think about your title, your URL, and your 1 to 2 sentence meta description, which is what people see when they're on Google. Make sure that they reflect you properly. If you are a hotel, you don't want your meta description to be a hotel in Belize. You want it to be something like beachfront family hotel with luxury, blah, 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 blah. You want to make sure that the keywords that identify what your hotel is and what it makes it special and stand out are incorporated into what people are actually seeing when they are searching on Google. So next, you want to finding these keywords can be a lot of work, but it's very helpful. And one way to do that is to think about how you would expect potential guests to find your hotel online. What words and phrases would you expect them to type into search engines to locate you? Are these words appearing on your website? Although it can be tempting, you want to avoid keyword stuffing, or once you've identified these keywords, you want to avoid just throwing them all over your website until it's almost nonsensical, just so that Google will pick them up. And then another thing you can do to make SEO work for you is to avoid or to make sure that your web pages load quickly. And you can do this by making sure they're not overloaded with photos or hosted on slow servers, because this will knock your SEO ranking down. Essentially, websites that perform quickly will get ranked higher by Google. So that's just a technical component that doesn't have to do with keywords. And then finally, you want to scale your SEO, which means to make it perform even better. And one way to do this is through linking, especially for hotels in really saturated markets. Basically, a website that has 1,000 links pointing at it from different websites has a better chance at ranking #1 than a site that just has 10 links pointing at it, which makes sense because essentially all these other websites are saying, yes, this one hotel, this one website is worth linking to. One way you can accomplish this is by doing something newsworthy and contacting the press about it, me. However, I urge you to never buy links, which is available online. Google is very smart, and if they see that you're cheating the system, they will knock you right back down. So one of the most important parts of SEO is going back to that content creation. section. I apologize for this huge block of text, but this slide really brings it all together. And I want to make sure that if you only remember one thing, it's the information here. This is how we're going to put that Russian doll back together, with SEO nested inside of content creation, which is nested inside of storytelling. One of the best uses of SEO is when it's applied to writing keyword-rich, highly relevant content created to tell a story. So you can see that sentence has all three components of this presentation in it. Content is essential to your SEO strategy because you can place the exact keywords that you're targeting in that content. If you want to rank highly for luxury hotel in Belize, you can write a page or blog post that contains that phrase several times. That's the content creation component. Here we're getting back into storytelling. Consumers often research broader travel topics. If you write an article on your blog, on your website, about some great restaurants in your area or tourist attractions or what to do in the city, you might rank for some of the keywords contained there, like Belize restaurants and so on. So we've moved back away from the hotel. So let's think back to that Instagram example. Even if your content is not actually about your hotel, but it's about Belize's amazing birds or the history of fry jacks or the pirate routes of the country, all amazing stories, it can still drive people to you. Travelers researching Belize may end up on your site as they read about these topics, and because they're already interested in traveling to your area, now they can conveniently book a stay with you after landing on your website. So hopefully this helps illustrate how exactly it all fits together. Essentially, you have your keywords that are going to drive SEO, that are going to drive your ranking higher in Google. You're putting those keywords into content that you create online that consumers will read in a storytelling format that will inspire them to come stay with you. And I also want to point out, actually, make sure that your site is actually being indexed by Google. So work with your site administrator to ensure that Google sees you. You have to switch it on, or in some cases, make sure it's just not switched off. So whoever your site administrator is, they can help you figure that out. But that's really important. You don't want to do all of this work just to find out that you're not even being looked at by Google. And one more SEO trick and content trick is just to stay on top of news and travel trends. If someone Googles Belize COVID 2021, which a lot of people are doing right now because they want to get out of here, maybe you write a blog post about that. And maybe that blog post about Belize's latest protocols, not about your hotel's protocols, but Belize's protocols, maybe that's going to be the first thing that comes up. And then the potential guests will see you as responsible and as a Belize travel expert. So that is really helpful, staying on top of trends, knowing what people are talking about and incorporating that into your content strategy can be a great way to not only use SEO to your advantage, but just get more eyes on your website. So to sum it all up, go forth and turn your excellent stories about your hotel in Belize into fantastic content that gets Google to rank you highest. And I hope you're all number one. So thank you all so much for attending and listening to me chat on for the last half hour. If you have any questions, I'm now here to take them. And in the next slide, I'll share my information in case you're interested in working together, or if you just have further questions after this. But for now, I'll take questions.
Hi, Ellie. Thank you for that presentation. I think we have one question so far from Caroline. She asked, Ali, what site do you recommend to test your SEO ranking?
I'll check on that because I'm not an SEO expert. I'm more of a storyteller, but I know that people like Moz, M-O-Z, but there really are a lot of them out there. So I think it would just be worth your while to do some research, but I'll also check in on that and get back to you so that I can give you the best possible answer.
Okay, thank you for that. A really useful one that we use is called Href. It gives you a lot of insights and information for your website and even your competitors. So if you want to check out that, it's ahref.com, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll share the link on the chat when I get a chance later. We have a message from Stephanie saying, Ali, in the great scope of things and from your perspective as an international travel writer, what are the most stories of interest for people who are looking to travel during these times? Topics such as topics that us as Belizean properties can write about?
That is a really good question. Obviously, people are concerned about COVID right now. They want to feel that where they're going is going to make them feel safe. So the safety protocols in the context of the whole country, not just the individual hotel, are really helpful. But I think also the stories that inspire. I think it's the same travel inspiration that's always held true. People want to know what makes Belize unique, and that's the people, the food, the landscape, the keys, the animals. I think that there's, I'd love to read more about how the role that hotels have played in the burgeoning bird watching industry. How has that been? How have hotels made that happen? Because I know that hotels have played a really big role in that, and now Belize leads the way on bird watching tourism. So I think, yes, people want to know about COVID, but really they want to feel inspired. They want to go to places that are unlike wherever their home is. They want to hear about the history of the Fry Jack. They want to hear, and any hotel with a restaurant has every right to write that story. It really doesn't have to be about your hotel, but writing about Belize is going to go a really long way. Or if a hotel has some history, I'm in that Facebook group about Belize history, and there's some amazing photos in there. I've spoken with some people about the fact that not that long ago, horses were the way to get around. I'd love to know more about that. And then maybe that will inspire me to go ride a horse in Belize, because there's a lot more history there than just the activity of horseback riding. So I think really digging into that inspirational component about what makes Belize such a special place is going to go a long way, because the people who are choosing travel right now, some of them don't care about the pandemic. Some of them care a lot about the pandemic. So whatever the reasons for visiting Belize are pretty much going to be the same as they were before. Of course, definitely, you can also Google COVID travel, see what kind of keywords show up. What kind of questions are people asking? Ask your guests. What questions did they have before they came? You can ask that directly when they're there. But I think people aren't going to travel right now because of the pandemic. And so it's really about hoping that, what everyone's talking about right now is what's the first place you're going to go to when this is all over. People are picking their places. So you want Belize to be the place that they select.
Yeah, that's a great answer for that. On the topic of SEO, I think while we create our storytelling content, I think it's also very important to make sure that your website content is up to date, that everything is optimized for SEO, like you mentioned. And you did say that SEO could be an entire presentation on its own, and I do agree. And if you'd like to have like a full SEO checklist, then you can email us at Believing and we can assist you with that, because it includes a lot of different things, like something as simple as claiming your Google My Business page. That is very helpful, and I think a lot of people forget to do simple things like that when it comes to SEO. So it's really important that you have all the right resources and get the right information when it comes to optimizing for SEO and making sure that you're following everything that you can do.
Yeah, and use the resources you have here. Obviously, Angela and Believing know a lot about SEO. So work with them, get them to consult with you. Use the information that's already living in your communities.
Okay. Ali, I just wanted to ask a quick question, because the pandemic has put a lot of restraint on a lot of our hotels' resources. Do you have any tips or channels that we could perhaps gain maximum exposure for little or no cost? Are there any things that you would recommend that we try to start or embark upon this storytelling?
First, for pretty much everyone in Belize, I would start with Instagram. It's free. Like I said, you can source photos from previous guests for free. And I do notice a lot of Belize hotels on Instagram, they're talking about discounts. They're talking about the amenities at the hotel, that there's a pool. That's all information they're going to find out when they decide to go to your website to book. Instagram is the source of storytelling inspiration right now, because everyone in the United States, at least, is just on their phone all day scrolling through Instagram, and what they want to see is a pretty picture with a caption that makes them feel like they're not stuck at home. So I think every hotel in Belize right now, and I've worked with a couple of hotels in Belize to change their Instagram strategy, and it's been effective to get that consistency in visual, to get that brand voice front and center. Start thinking about what your values are as a hotel and the stories that that hotel can share about your history, about where it fits into the context of Belize, and share those and use the amazing photos that other people have already taken, and put them on your Instagram and use hashtags and do a little bit of, spend an hour a day on Instagram getting that storytelling going. It's super easy. And then the next thing to do would be to, if you have the capacity to do blog posts on your website, start running blog posts about those same kind of topics, and start using your SEO keywords in there. But Instagram is free. It's simple to use. And I think pretty much everyone in Belize could be using it more effectively. So there's room for growth there, and it could be immediate. I went to some of the most expensive hotels in Belize on their Instagrams, and their follower counts are just so much lower than what I know that they could be. So I think that would be an amazing place to start.
Okay. We have one more question, and this one is quite interesting. Apparently, it's today's most important question. When are we getting this prize guidebook that you promised when interviewed on our podcast?
That is an excellent question. And you're right, Abner, that should have been the first thing that I focused on for this whole presentation and through the pandemic. I will get started on that right away because I'm actually making fry jacks today. So the timing is very good. I need to come back and research. So I think to Simone's point earlier about me needing to come be a proper resident, it's time for me to come back to Belize and work on this book that I've promised you. I'll make sure you get the first copy, but yeah, I think it's time.
Okay, so Ali, another question for you. If there are persons who are online today who are interested in developing their media strategy and would like to learn a little bit more about content creation or perhaps their brand voice, as you mentioned, how would they get in touch with you so that they could communicate at Buena Pues?
I'm ready for you. So that's a great question. If you'd like to contact me, or if you have more questions, feel free to contact me by email. I'm on WhatsApp at the phone number, but I'm probably best through email. You can follow me on Instagram. I need to point out that I am primarily a journalist. So if you wanted to work together in a larger capacity, whether it's me creating content for your site or consulting with you at a deeper level on developing your brand narrative and your digital marketing strategy, I would not be able to write about you in a journalistic capacity. So I'm happy to answer questions and do things from a friendly perspective. But if you would like to work together, you're going to have to decide whether that's content creation or journalism. So that's up to you. But here's my information in any case for quick questions and that sort of thing.
Okay, I have another, well, this is like a semi-discussion because I know when we were trying to create the content for this webinar, we had discussions about whether we're going to have Ali talk about journalism, whether we were going to have her talk about storytelling, whether we were going to have her talk about working with international partners. And because blogging and content creation and SEO is so much a part of the digital marketing effort, could you just emphasize from like a visitor's perspective how important it is for us to be placed in the digital market at this time?
It's the most important thing. Print magazines are folding, airline magazines, no one's on airplanes reading them. Digital marketing is not only ubiquitously, it's used by everybody across the world in the travel industry, but people are online quite a bit these days. And you want to make sure that your message is getting in front of as many people as possible. And it has the added benefit of that data component. You know how well a piece of content performed. Last year, one of the best articles I wrote was about making popsicles out of wine. That's not a subject I write a lot about, but people really liked it. So I was able to learn I should write more about that kind of thing. So once you really get into digital marketing, you have the benefit of that data to keep guiding you. And it's also, things are closing. Things are, today Norwegian Airlines said they're no longer going to have flights from the US to Europe. Things are changing on the travel landscape. So you want to stay competitive out there while people are, again, making these decisions about their future and how they plan to travel. A huge trend is something called regenerative travel. People want to know that when they can travel again, they're going to be kind to the earth. They're going to have a means of being a good human being and a good member of the planet. So now is a really good time to emphasize how eco-conscious Belize is, because when people are picking their destinations, they say, I don't want to go to Paris. I don't want to go to a city. I want to go somewhere where I can be part of the solution. So Belize is that. So getting those messages in front of people, even if they can't act on it this second, it's going to matter down the line.
And I just wanted to quickly add that, especially during today's kind of climate with COVID-19, people can no longer actually distribute physical copies of any kind of content. So going digital is just the way moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Ali said about creating your content, making sure that you tell the appropriate story to the right audience, it all reminds me of inbound marketing, which is very important, and just making sure that you have your entire checklist of what to do, especially abiding by SEO rules, and just making sure that you actually invest some money into doing digital marketing the right way.
Yeah.
I see that there's one more question here. It says, how would one find a local freelance content creator for their property? LinkedIn?
Well, in Belize, I would imagine you just ask around. You know someone who knows someone. I know a few folks locally, but I'm not sure if there's any sort of, that would be a better question for someone in Belize. I don't think there's a central marketplace for that. I just know photographers and writers personally. But yeah, I think the best way to do it is if you see content you like, to ask the person who made it where they got it from.
Yeah, I think it depends what kind of content you want as well. If you want photos, if you want blogs, you can get them from different people. But I think a good way is going back to Instagram, where you see people posting and tagging. There are a bunch of micro influencers in Belize. So if you do browse through Instagram and check out hashtags, then you can maybe find a good content creator that could create the right content for your property.
Yeah, we actually benefited from that this year, because we did a lot of cooperations in producing our guide. So what we did, and what is another possible opportunity, is to barter things for that content. So for instance, you see photos that you like, you have room nights, you can, and because we're not as liquid as before. Things are not as vibrant as before. So you have to renegotiate how you would actually get that content, and we found that bartering is one of the ways in which you can do that. If you're looking for photographers, in our guide, the hotel guide that we publish and is available on our site, you can see a list of some of Belize's top talented photographers. Belizeing.com, they contributed as well, so they're also an avenue, but we have so much talent here, and I think now is the time for us to dig in and tap into our resources. We do have bloggers. You can contact us here at the Belize Hotel Association. We have a few people in our portfolio that we can connect you with. And of course, Ali herself is offering her services, and everything is out there for display. So just stay in touch, explore, reach out. You can make the connections between any of us that are here in order to get the information that you need.
Yeah, and it's been great seeing on Instagram all the content creators. I'm so sorry I forget his name, but there's an incredible illustrator who's been doing he's just wrote in a book about Maya mythological history, and he's so talented, and I'm learning so much. And I would love to see that at more hotels and on their digital marketing programs.
Ali, there's another question, and I think this is an important topic that we should actually touch on, because you have privacy policies when you are marketing digitally. And I think this is something that as a hotelier, as a marketer, we need to be cognizant of. How and when can you use people's photos, and do you think that digital marketing will improve for our region, or do you think that it'll stay stagnant? I mean, what's your outlook as somebody external?
To stay on top of it, it is constantly changing. I used to work in Facebook marketing, and I mean, the rules changed once a week. So I think the best thing to do is to be conservative in this regard. So with Instagram, specifically Instagram, if you want to use a photo on your feed, ask them for permission, get their written yes, and they'll always want credit, and you could always credit the photographer or the artist, and you can use it on your Instagram feed. You cannot use that for any other marketing purposes on any other platforms. So I think beyond that, it's worth consulting with a lawyer or a marketing agency that you're paying to help you figure out these nuances. Because although I'm able to keep up as much as I can, this is not the main part of what I do. So I don't want you to say, well, Ali said I could do it. You can only do the Instagram thing that I said, and that could change next week. So take it with a grain of salt. But I think hiring a marketing agency, and those exist, they're in Belize, you can ask them and use their expertise to help guide you on that. Obviously, the easiest way to avoid any legal problems like this is to create the content yourself in-house, or to hire someone, use a contract, make sure that you have the rights to that content. As for what's going to will digital marketing will be better or worse in Belize, I honestly think it will be better, because it kind of democratizes the digital marketing landscape. It's no longer about access to physical copies of things. You can reach whatever audiences you want if you figure out how to get them. So I think it's actually really good for places like Belize. Again, I think what can be difficult for Belize, at least from my perspective, is this drive from outsiders to turn it into Tulum or Cancun, to turn it into something that it's not, to be competitive with those places. So I think that you have to be careful. But ultimately, I see digital marketing as something that Belize can easily capture to tell their story, not to try to compete with other people's stories. But I guess it will remain to be seen. Someone in Belize could become the next TikTok star, and then everybody will want to go there. So those things, they work however they work. That is a little bit hard to predict, but I think ultimately it'll be good for Belize. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
To maybe just mention that it would be helpful, instead of maybe if your selling tactics aren't working at the moment, it is helpful if you do provide useful information for travelers who are interested in coming to Belize and booking a hotel. At the moment, for example, with what we did at Belize when the pandemic hit Belize earlier last year, we figured that bookings are not coming in at all. No one can come to Belize and travel. So we thought the most useful thing that we can do for our website and to help our rankings was to make our website turn into an information hub where people can read about all the travel restrictions and updates about Belize during this COVID-19 pandemic. And so that's one of the ways that we took the situation that was dealt to us and made it better. So I'm sure that a lot of properties can also do that as well, whether it's talking about what they are doing to make sure that guests coming in can have the most fun and relaxing and safe experience. So that's just something that I wanted to note and let you guys know. Maybe it can spark some ideas on your end for your content creation.
Yeah, I think being adaptable to what's actually going on is really important with digital marketing, because if people aren't talking about whatever it is you're talking about, then you're not part of the conversation. And so you want to make sure that whatever it is you have to say, you are part of the conversation. That's a really good point.
And with the advent of many social channels, I mean, it gives us the opportunity to have our voice on several platforms. I think that was one of the major pushes that the Belize Hotel Association went with when we decided to launch a national channel, because what happens is right now there are a lot of domestic tourists that we can tap into, and because of the uncertainty that Ali mentioned, there are people who want to travel, they're not able to travel, and then you don't know when things are going to start to pan out so that you start to get the volume of tourists that you were used to. So we've actually engineered a medium that you can actually broadcast to locals that these are the specials that you're having, that this is my story. And then we encourage you to create that type of content, share those stories, let us know about the person that's been working with you for 15 years and can tell you every single species of fish on the reef. That's a part of storytelling as well. So like here at the association, we are very willing to partner with you to expose you. Ali, with her resources, is also very willing to help you. And of course, Belizean is always a partner in everything Belize. That's why they're Belizean.com. You guys gonna have to pay me for that plug there. But
I'll see you later.
but it was definitely a wonderful session. The wealth of information that was put forward was amazing. I know that our viewers found it very useful, because I'm seeing the comments here in the chat, and we enjoy having you here. Ali, you're already an honorary Belizean. We just need to make you an actual Belizean. But we're looking forward to your visit. I believe you said that you're going to be here in February.
Yeah, that's hopefully things will be calm enough here in the US for me to leave.
Okay. And it's important that, I mean, while we have our viewers online, that we just share like some of the bits of discussion that we had, that, the fact that the political party is changing, there's an element of uncertainty, the things that are being required by CDC. That's the reason why people are actually holding back from traveling right now. But their intention still very much remains the same, that they will be out on the next flight with the new president, because they'll know exactly what's happening. So it was definitely a great show, great webinar. Thanks again to Team Belizean for hosting us. Thank you very much to Ali for your time preparing that wonderful presentation, taking your very pricey and expensive time to come and impart knowledge to all of us. We are so grateful. I'm just gonna quickly scan through. Okay, somebody would like, okay, you've already updated the chat, and yes, thanks to everyone for joining us. Please, the webinar will be available for viewing after the session. So if you found the information resourceful, you could just tell somebody. It's available on the Belize Hotel Association blog page under our resources webinar. And then it will also be sent, if you are already registered, you will also receive a copy of it in your email. And if you want to be a local tourist in your country, please feel free to check out Channel 15 on Central TV, where the Belize Hotel Association has its own station that's showcasing all of our lovely properties for you to come and enjoy. All right, so have a wonderful day. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.